I got you, people. So I got tired of seeing this video about the guy Robert Brooks, the guy that supposedly was gonna be transferred to one jail to another, and his fate got short. It's like cut short because of the correction officers. But listen, when you go to jail, the first thing that's gonna happen to you, the inmates themselves are gonna screen you where you fall in. Are you gonna fall in as a man, or are you gonna fall in as a bitch? So that's why when you go inside these prison, the first thing they hit you with is words, and fighting words, aggressive words. And depending on how you handle it, you're gonna become an asset to them, or you're gonna become a bitch asset to them, right? So that's what it is. We don't know what this Robert Brooks did that got him in jail. It's obvious. Right now he's a convict, or was a convict, because he's no longer in society no more, or in the correction facility anymore because of his death. Being that these correction officers handcuffed him and have beat him up and caused him his death. When he went to the medical, he died, right? We don't know if it was internal or he was already suffering from some injury. The thing is that these correction officers cannot give a convict a break because of the situations that occur, right? That inmates are violently towards correction officers. And that's a battle between correction officers and the inmate, because all the inmates stick to each other, and all the correction officers got to stick to each other to protect themselves, just like the inmates protect themselves against the correction and other inmates inside the prison facilities. That's a factual thing that happens every time, and convicts are there to do their time, and instead of doing their time, they're fighting amongst each other. It's a thing that a civilian person could never understand, because if you was never inside prison or convict, you never gonna know how the convicts work inside prisons. These convicts are trained to try to convince you to do their bidding. Just the same way correctional officers gotta have you go by the rules and regulations of the correction facilities. So we don't know what really went on between the correction officers and Robert Brooks that caused him to get beat up by these 14 supposedly correction officers while in handcuffs, right? Supposedly, I thought that he had stabbed his girlfriend 17 times. Now, you think that a person that stabs somebody 17 times should be given mercy once he's in jail? Nobody, this guy should be considered dangerously, and you don't know what could trigger him to take somebody else's life also. So convicts are not to be taken lightly, no matter who they are, where they came from. Once you're in prison, you're high risk to everybody. You cannot trust any convict. So you know what was wrong about this? That regular civilians or people that had this ghetto mentality that was raised on the street, they're always gonna try to justify that the correction officers were wrong. Now, I'm not saying that they're wrong or they're right, but when you're a convict, you there for a reason, and your mind thinks different. You're gonna do whatever it takes to get away from your sentence, or try to con somebody else to get what you want. So you gotta stop showing sympathy for these convicts all the time, because you don't know what they're in there for. And you know what the thing is? Let's say this convict had killed one of your relatives or robbed one of your relatives. You think you're gonna feel sorry for that convict? No. You think it's, put him in jail, let him have peace, have medical rights, 3 meals a day that most people out here in the city, in the country, don't have. But these convicts live in luxury. That's why they think when anything happens to them, they gotta cry out, and the private citizens, law-abiding citizens, gotta protect them. No, you there to serve a sentence that was given to you, and whichever which way you got to serve it, you got to serve it. You know, in other countries, they don't have facilities that they have in America. That's why you rather come here and go to jail and then other countries, right? Because you live like a king. Most of these people live their whole life, half of their life in prison, and they do prison. What I mean, they treat themselves like prisoners, and they conduct themselves as prisoners, and they got their own rules. So you're never gonna understand a convict's mind with a regular person that's privately living outside the walls of prison, right? So we don't know what happened between the time that he got transferred, he got in there, and how did it escalate to the correction officers beating him up. And the correction officers are stupid. They want to beat somebody up, but they have it on camera. You know, the cameras are there to protect themselves or whatever. He wasn't violent enough to cause any harm, but they still beat him up. I guess to death, because he died after. Thing is, he must have said something to the correction officers, or the correction officers found something that he cannot be, you know, trusted without handcuffs. Because most inmates, they get beat up without being handcuffed. And, you know, everything is all right because they say it's justified because, you know, he was beating them up and he got in trying to detain them, and he was fighting back, so they had to use force on him, you know, in order to detain them. But prisoners shouldn't have no rights that give them the leverage to always commit crimes and go out and commit crimes to other civilians and still live a good life. While civilians out here can't afford 3 meals a day or have medical care for free, while in there they have everything for free. You know, maybe I got off the topic, but I'm just I'm giving you a scenario of what goes on. So convicts are not allowed to be trusted. It's a plain, simple thing. If you want to survive in prison, you cannot trust your fellow inmate, not even people of your own race. These people are there to con you. They learn things to con people, right? They become professionals in conning people and getting their way. If they don't get their way, they get upset. They want to full strike. They do all kinds of things to get things their way. But, you know, the correction department shouldn't give in to these demands, because it changes everything. It gets in the way of how the prisoners run. And although it was wrong that these correction officers could beat somebody up with handcuffs, even police officers here in the state do the same thing. Now they slow down, but I remember back in the 80s, if you said anything to a cop or he didn't like you, the first thing he does it calmly first, right? Oh, put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. Once you're under arrest, they take you to the precinct and they give you a beat down. You know, it's not the first time that it happens. It's been happening way before all this happened. There's a lot of people out there that got beaten by cops while their hands were behind their backs and handcuffs. That's not the first time. Thing is, at that time, they didn't have cameras. So they did this on a regular basis. They didn't like you. They separate you, put you in a different cell, put your hands behind the back, and then they call the rest of the buddies, correction officers, police officers, and they give you a beat down. There's nothing you can do about it, because they're going to probably say that you got violent and they had to detain you and they had to use force. But this time, Robert Brooks didn't show that he was using force, and he was in handcuffs, and these 14 correction officers beat him up. It's unfortunate that this happened, but this happens on the regularly, not only to inmates by correction officers, by inmates and inmates. This is nothing new, people. Do not feel sorry for these convicts. I don't care. Listen, if I'm committed a crime and I have to pay the consequences, I have to serve these consequences because I committed the crime. And the punishment, you know, it's got to equal the crime. That's the only thing I agree. The crime's got to equal the punishment. You know, you cannot, just because he was smoking weed, you're going to give him 10 years. You know, that doesn't fit the crime. So that's what I'm saying. We don't know what really happened between Robert Brooks getting transferred from one facility to another facility, and he ended up getting beat up by 14 correction officers. I think that's extreme, but it's got to be a reason. I hope there was a reason why 14 correction officers were on him and beating him up, while he was in handcuffs. And it doesn't even make it right, even if he wasn't in handcuffs, while 14 cops were on him. They should have videotaped that from the beginning, what escalated to his death. So I don't think that any convict should be given special treatment. That's why most of these convicts come back, because they know they could live their life out in prison and still do things and turn other minor criminals into full-blown career criminals. It doesn't make no sense of giving them too much privileges in jail. And with that, people, I'll let you go and you think about that.